Hello, my name's Duncan and welcome to Back Away from the Donkey Back Books. And today I am looking at The Long Loud Silence by Wilson Tucker. So let's start off with, okay? So what are these? We've got that. And that. Yes, SF Masterworks. One of the sort of well-known reprints in science fiction sort of history. Okay, and on the back of, I must admit I prefer the original design to the yellow spine ones, but that's just my preference. Not listed on here, but on these ones, it tells you what the SF Masterworks are. And it's got, I will quote, Masterworks is a library of the greatest SF ever written, chosen with the help of today's leading SF writers and editors. These books show that genuinely innovative FF is exciting today as when it was first written. And it's got an amazing list, generally the best novels in 60 years of SF by Ian M. Banks, quote. So, next my question is, why is there no Wilson Tucker on this list? Okay, why is there no Wilson Tucker? I've read 3 Wilson Tucker books, The Time Masters, The Long Loud Silence, which I have just read, and obviously The Year of the Quiet Sun, which I read last year. The Year of the Quiet Sun here, which as far as I'm concerned is an absolute masterpiece. I am doing a buddy read later on this year, so keep your eye out for that, because I'm going to reread it, because I'm really looking forward to rereading it. And there's the Time Masters issue, another. That is one I've got a few more ready to read. So, tell you a story. Take you back to the Wayback Machine to 2015. Okay, whole 2015. And the weird thing I discovered yesterday was that people born in 2007 in the UK are legally allowed to drink now, which scared the living bejesus out of me. But that's by the by. Let's just go back forward to 2015. 2015, listed to be in an SF Masterwork, was The Long Loud Silence. And it even had a cover done, and I'll show you a picture of the cover up there. And the cover was originally done by Christopher Gibbs, and I assume the company he worked for. And I'll give a link to the website where I got the cover from, just so you can have a quick look. But yes, so they were all ready to release it, and they didn't. I'm assuming this was a rights issue or something like that, because I think that's the reason why some of them aren't published. But why has nobody done this? So after reading The Year of the Quiet Sun last year, which as I said is a masterpiece and everybody should read it, I went in search of The Long Loud Silence. Long Loud Silence is 1953, and it's post-apocalyptic, and people quote it as being, one of the best of its time. It was runner-up to, in the 1953 Hugo Award, which was the first time they'd done an award for a novel. It was a runner-up to The Demolished Man by Alfred Bester. So, yeah, good pedigree, you must think. But it's been out of print. Well, it's been out of print in the UK since 1980 was the last printing of it. So I went in search of it. Used copies. So used copies, I was finding them silly money for a paperback ones. You were talking between £25 and £30 for a battered paperback that looked worse than. That's pretty good quality, but in really bad condition. And I'm sorry, I'm willing to pay money for used books for the collection, but that's sort of thing. So all I could find was, and there was a few of the 1953 release, and there was a few of the 1980 release. Other than that, I couldn't find them. I live somewhere, I don't have access to used bookshops. We've got a couple of charity shops here, and that's it. If you don't know, I live in the Orkney Islands, so if I want to get anywhere big used shops, I have to go swimming across the Pentland Firth, which I'm not doing at the moment. So yes, went in deep search for it, out published, and in the end I stumbled across a unofficial, I'm going to hold my hands up, ebook copy of The Long Loud Silence. And what I will say is, as soon as somebody republishes it, I'm willing to put my Scottish pennies down and buy a copy of this book. But I so wanted to read this, and us people who want to read stuff, if we can't find it in print, it's, yeah. But no, I'm not paying stupid amounts of money to a used bookseller when the money's not even going to be going to the author or the people who own the rights to it. So as much as I don't like finding obscure unofficial copies, that's what I did. It's not a thing I'd normally do, but that's the way it had to be. So I so wanted to read this book. So anyway, I discovered as well then, after I read it, that there is in fact 2 different versions. Well, there might be 2 or 3 different versions. The 1953 one, and then in 1969, Wilson Tucker himself revised the text. And basically, it is the original 1953 one is post World War II. And in the 1969 copy, it was like post Vietnam, so there's Vietnam references into it. Also, apparently, in the US original editions, the implications to cannibalism were taken out. But in the UK versions, they were still in the 1953 one, which is, I know that because I've just read one, a 1953 copy, and there were some other differences. Cannot find anywhere that lists all the major changes, so unless I get the text side by side, can't tell you specifically, and I would like to one day. Any of my viewers, if you find a copy of The Long Loud Silence at a vaguely reasonable price, I'm talking £10 or lower, £10 English pound or lower, please buy it and tell me, and I'll pay you for it, and I'm happy to do it, but I'm not paying stupid amounts of money for it, because, yeah, it's ridiculous. Somebody needs to republish it, and I'm looking at USF Masterworks. You need to get a republish of this, and somebody's other work. Year of the White Sun needs to be published in a beautiful folio edition and fantastic version. Why has nobody done that? Sorry, enough of that rant. So now, shall I get on and tell you about the book so you can decide if it's worth reading? The book opens, it's quite grim, it really opens with a scene of who ends up being our protagonist, is Corporal Gary Robinson, who's watching an old woman trying to get across the river, which is, we find out, is the Mississippi. And it's in the dark, and he's saying that she won't get across, and we hear what happens to her. Then in the next chapter, we flash back to earlier, to what we discover is years earlier, and he wakes up in a hotel after a drunken night out with a huge hangover to discover that America has been bombed. It's like the towns have been bombed, and there's craters everywhere. And we discover as it goes along that the fact that the US has been quarantined along the light of the Mississippi from east to west. So the east side is quarantined off and the west isn't. And that is because they believe there's a plague there, which was also dropped down, a plague or a disease, and along with radiation things. So they have basically built it up so they won't let anybody quarantine off the east area. So he wakes up in his hotel. There's a body of a woman that's been stabbed. He explores the hotel, and weirdly he goes down and explores his hotel, and he gets down to the bottom and hears a noise, and suddenly realises he's naked. He'd forgotten to put his clothes on, which I found a bit weird. But anyway, he does this, but what we discover quite early on is he's not really a nice man. And I don't think this has got anything to do with what happened, but he's not a likeable person. And I think that comes out in the first quote when he sort of sees somebody. The woman passed him a half hour before. Curiosity had made him follow her, the morbid curiosity of an onlooker who knows the game will end in disaster. She had been carrying no food. He saw that in his first swift scrutiny. Had she been carrying anything to eat, he probably would have forcibly taken it from her. So that's the sort of man we're dealing with. It's a book of loneliness and optimism. Don't expect any strong female characters. The female characters in this are far and in between, and they are basic commodities, and they are almost foils for him and anybody else as well. But it works within the context of what's going on. This is post-apocalyptic. This is what Wilson Tucker's vision of what it would be like. So don't expect strong female warriors or taking force. And also, it was written in 1953, so obviously as much as I don't like to make a big thing of when a book was written, affecting the stereotypes within that book, that is probably another reason why the female characters are far and few between. In the beginning of the book, Corporal Gary, he's convinced that this is only going to be for a short term, and as it goes longer and longer, he keeps going. He sort of follows down the pockets of the Mississippi. It's almost like, and tries to think of ways to get across. At one point, he joins up with another guy, which makes quite an interesting experience, and they go off to winter somewhere. And that's all sort of quite interesting with interactions and how he is as a person. But he's constantly looking for wings. But it's like in some ways, the same as the Year of the Quiet Sun. I think I described the Year of the Quiet Sun as like a creeping apocalypse. Well, it's Long Loud Silence. It's also creeping and slowly paced. I can see links between this book he wrote and obviously The Year of the Quiet Sun. Even though it was written sort of 20 years apart, you can see the links in his style and his writing. This is another sort of slow, creeping doom and grim. It is a grim, grim book. But unlike other sort of post-apocalyptic books, if you read something like The Road, it sort of slaps your head around with how grim and horrible it is. This does it quite quietly and methodically, and you just feel it sort of claustrophobically coming into you, or the despair. But our protagonist, Corporal Gary, what little humanity he has, you feel sort of almost getting drained out of him. Even when later on he meets a family who have managed to keep some semblance of normality going, all he sees it as an opportunity to do things, an opportunity to take advantage of that situation. It's not an easy read, but it's not a long read. So yeah, the book is pretty grim, and you can feel the sort of hangover of sort of the Second World War and Hiroshima and Nagasaki sort of hanging over this book like a little bit of a haze. I'd be interested to hear the sort of updated version, which sort of is post-Vietnam, which, that might show some of the differences. But it's all got that sort of feeling. And if you're thinking about the 50s, everybody was convinced that there was going to be nuclear war as well. So all of that is sort of present within the whole feeling of this book. I love Tucker's prose in this. It works because it's quite not stripped back totally. It is not overly sort of descriptive, overly flowery. It lets you fill in the blanks, and it doesn't take you away from the whole feel and concept of the book. I'm still very impressed. Like a book written in the 50s, you've got mentions of cannibalism, polyamory. You've got a really disagreeable character and such a bleak book. And I'm just impressed that this got released with very little. I know he sort of self-censored a bit for the American market, but it still got released and people still liked it. And I also really, really like the way Tucker finishes off a book. The Year of the Quiet Sun's got a really, really great ending. The last chapter is quite stunning. But on this one, The Long Loud Silence, we get another really good ending. It's really sort of the last page that really sort of nice sort of note to end it on. I'm not telling you what it is because you have to go and read it. But yeah, so if you want a post-apocalyptic book that doesn't really feel that dated. There's a few bits that will make you dated. There's he at one point is come across an aqualung, scuba gear type stuff. But people who he meets don't know what it is. But you have to remember, this is 1953. I don't think Jacques Cousteau and the guy that invented the aqualung with him, I don't think that was done until back into the 40s, 1948, I think. So it was not common to see scuba tanks and scuba gear. So bits like that sort of date it a little bit. Not date it, because within that world it's correct, but that sort of points out when it was written. But generally, it is quite a modern feeling sort of concept. As a post-apocalyptic book, I think it's up there. I think it's really, really good. And I advise anybody to have a look at it, especially if you're a fan of sort of 50 science fiction. I don't think it feels like sort of golden age science fiction. I think it feels almost heading towards sort of the new wave sort of stylings. And as I said, for something that was written in 1953, I'm really, really impressed by it. So yeah, I'd highly recommend this. I don't think it's as good as The Year of the Quiet Sun, which I said is a masterpiece, and I think it's just a bit below that, but still a very well worth book to read. I've got a written review of this that I have put up on my blog, which is going to be released about the same time I release this video, so I'll put a link below, so if you want to go and see that, that's fine. And as always, you can come and speak to me on my Discord and stuff. That links are down below. But thank you very much for watching, and I said I recommend these Wilson Tucker books. I think his output can be a bit variable, but the ones I've read so far have all been very good. And look out later on for the year for my reread of The Year of the Quiet Sun, which is going to be a buddy read as well. So I'll speak to you all very, very soon. Bye for now.